Have you ever wondered why some people seem to learn English almost effortlessly while others spend years studying grammar, memorizing vocabulary, and watching countless videos, yet still struggle to speak with confidence? The answer might surprise you. It isn't talent, it isn't intelligence, and it certainly isn't luck. The real secret is much simpler. They read every single day. Reading in English is one of the most powerful habits you can develop. It quietly transforms your vocabulary, strengthens your grammar, sharpens your thinking, and gradually teaches your brain to understand English naturally. You don't even notice the change at first. But one day, you suddenly realize you're understanding movies without subtitles, recognizing words you've never intentionally studied, and expressing your thoughts more easily than ever before. That's the incredible power of reading. Many language learners believe speaking is the fastest way to improve. While speaking is important, research consistently shows that language input comes before language output. In simple words, before your mouth can produce fluent English, your brain must first absorb thousands and thousands of examples of correct English. This idea is supported by linguist Stephen Krashen through his famous input hypothesis. He explains that people acquire languages most effectively when they receive understandable, meaningful input. Reading is one of the richest forms of that input. Every page you read becomes another lesson your brain quietly stores for future conversations. Think about how children learn their first language. Nobody gives a 2-year-old a grammar textbook. They simply hear thousands of sentences every day. Eventually, their brains begin recognizing patterns. Reading works in a very similar way for adults learning a second language. Every sentence you read teaches your brain what correct English sounds like. Without forcing yourself to memorize rules, you naturally begin understanding sentence structures, common expressions, and the rhythm of the language. Neuroscientists have discovered something fascinating about the human brain. Every time you read, millions of neurons communicate with one another, strengthening existing neural pathways while creating new ones. This process is known as neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to adapt and reorganize itself through experience. The more consistently you read, the stronger these language pathways become. Over time, recognizing English words requires less effort. Your brain processes information faster, and understanding becomes increasingly automatic. Imagine your brain as a forest. The first time you walk through it, creating a path is difficult. Thick bushes slow you down. Every step requires effort. But if you walk the same route every day, the path becomes clearer, smoother, and easier to follow. Reading English works exactly the same way. Every page clears another part of the path. Eventually, your brain travels through English almost effortlessly. Another amazing benefit of daily reading is vocabulary growth. Many learners spend hours memorizing word lists, only to forget most of them within days. Why? Because isolated words have no meaningful context. Our brains remember information much better when it's connected to a story, an emotion, or a situation. Reading naturally provides that context. Instead of learning that the word determined means being strong-minded, you meet a determined character who refuses to give up despite failure. Suddenly, the word becomes alive. It carries emotion. It has meaning. Your brain remembers it much longer. Studies from cognitive psychology suggest that repeated exposure plays a major role in long-term memory. You don't need to memorize every word you see. In fact, trying to do so often creates frustration. Instead, allow words to appear naturally again and again. The more frequently your brain encounters them, the stronger the memory becomes. Reading provides this repetition without making it feel repetitive. Reading also teaches grammar in a surprisingly natural way. Many students fear grammar because they imagine endless rules and confusing exercises. But fluent speakers rarely think about grammar while talking. Their brains simply know what sounds correct because they've seen those patterns thousands of times before. Every book, article, and story becomes a silent grammar teacher. Without realizing it, you're collecting examples of correct English that your brain will later use during speaking and writing. Psychologists often describe learning as pattern recognition. The human brain constantly searches for repeated structures. Reading supplies countless examples of these patterns. After seeing, "I have been working dozens of times," your brain begins recognizing it as natural English. Eventually, producing similar sentences requires little conscious effort. You're no longer translating from your native language. You're thinking directly in English. But perhaps the greatest gift reading offers is confidence. Many English learners secretly fear making mistakes. They hesitate before every sentence. They overthink every word. This mental pressure slows communication. Daily reading gradually reduces that fear because your brain becomes familiar with how English truly works. Instead of guessing, you begin trusting your instincts. Confidence isn't built overnight. It's built page by page, paragraph by paragraph, book by book. There's a famous quote by the Roman philosopher Marcus Aurelius: "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Reading improves not only your English but also your thinking. Every book introduces new ideas, different cultures, fresh perspectives, and valuable lessons. You're not simply learning a language, you're expanding your mind. Now imagine where you could be 1 year from today. If you read just 20 minutes every day, that's over 120 hours of English exposure in a single year. Hundreds of stories, thousands of new words, countless grammar patterns, a stronger memory, better concentration, greater confidence, all created by one simple daily habit. And the best part, you don't need expensive courses, you don't need natural talent, you don't even need perfect pronunciation to begin. All you need is the willingness to open a book, read one page, then another, and keep going. Because every page you read today becomes the fluent English you speak tomorrow. Now, let's explore something even more fascinating. What actually happens inside your brain when you read English every day? The answer is incredible. Every sentence you read is like a workout for your mind. Just as lifting weights strengthens your muscles, reading strengthens the neural connections responsible for language, memory, attention, and comprehension. Scientists have found that the brain doesn't simply store words like files in a computer. Instead, it builds an interconnected network of meaning. Every new word becomes connected to dozens of others. The more you read, the larger and stronger that network becomes. This is why fluent readers can often understand unfamiliar words without opening a dictionary. Their brains naturally use context to predict meaning. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is speaking English. At first, everything sounds confusing, but after months of reading, something changes. Your brain begins recognizing familiar words instantly. You no longer translate every sentence into your native language. Instead, you understand English. In English. This is one of the biggest milestones in language learning, and reading is one of the fastest ways to reach it. Researchers in cognitive science often describe reading as active learning. Unlike watching a video, reading requires your brain to imagine scenes, connect ideas, predict outcomes, and interpret meaning. Every paragraph demands attention. Because your brain works harder, it remembers more. That's why people who read regularly often develop stronger comprehension skills than those who only consume passive content. Think about your favorite movie. Imagine reading the novel it was based on. The movie shows you everything. The book makes you create everything. Every character, every expression, every landscape, every emotion. Your brain builds it all. That mental effort is exactly what strengthens your language ability. Reading also improves something psychologists call working memory. Working memory is the brain's ability to hold and process information at the same time. Imagine trying to understand a long English sentence. You must remember the beginning while processing the end. The stronger your working memory becomes, the easier English conversations feel. Daily reading quietly trains this ability without you even noticing. Another powerful advantage is focus. We live in a world filled with endless notifications, short videos, and constant distractions. Our attention spans are becoming shorter every year. Reading pushes against this trend. Even reading for just 20 minutes a day teaches your brain to stay focused on one task. Over time, concentrating becomes easier, not only while learning English, but also while studying, working, and solving problems. Let's talk about vocabulary again. But this time, from a scientific perspective, studies suggest that people learn vocabulary most effectively through repeated exposure in meaningful contexts. Suppose you encounter the word opportunity. The first time, you may not fully understand it. A few days later, you see it in another article, then again in a story. Later, you hear it in a podcast. Eventually, your brain recognizes the pattern. You don't memorize the definition. You acquire the word naturally. That's exactly how children learn their first language, and adults can benefit from the same process. This is why forcing yourself to memorize hundreds of words in one day rarely works. The brain isn't designed to learn language like a dictionary. It's designed to learn through experience, repetition, and meaningful context. Reading also helps you notice collocations, words that naturally go together. Native speakers don't usually say strong rain. They say heavy rain. They don't say make homework. They say do homework. These combinations aren't always logical, but they become familiar through repeated reading. Over time, your brain starts choosing the correct combinations automatically. Perhaps you've experienced this before. You hear someone say a sentence, and somehow it just sounds right, even if you can't explain the grammar. That's because your brain has absorbed enough examples to recognize natural patterns. Reading builds that intuition day after day. There's another hidden benefit that many learners overlook: confidence through familiarity. Fear often comes from uncertainty. If you've only seen a grammar structure once, you'll hesitate to use it. But after reading it hundreds of times, your confidence grows naturally. You stop asking yourself, is this correct? Because your brain already knows the answer. Successful people throughout history understood the power of reading. Billionaire investor Warren Buffett has often said that he spends much of his day reading. Bill Gates is known for reading dozens of books every year. While they read for knowledge rather than language learning, their habit reveals an important truth. Reading compounds over time. Every page adds a little more understanding. Every book builds on the last. Small daily improvements eventually create extraordinary results. Language learning works exactly the same way. Reading one page today won't make you fluent tomorrow. Reading every day for a year might completely transform your English. Many learners make the mistake of waiting until they feel ready to read books. But that's backwards. You become ready by reading. Start with simple stories, children's books, graded readers, short articles, easy novels. Don't worry if you don't understand every word. Even native speakers occasionally encounter unfamiliar vocabulary. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. A helpful rule is this: if you understand about 80 to 95% of the text, you're reading at the right level, challenging enough to learn, but not so difficult that you become frustrated. Remember, consistency always beats intensity. Reading for 20 minutes every day is far more effective than reading for 4 hours once a month. Your brain learns through repetition, not occasional bursts of effort. So the next time you think, I'm too busy to read today, remember this. Those 20 minutes aren't just helping you learn English. They're strengthening your memory, improving your focus, expanding your vocabulary, sharpening your grammar, and building a brain that processes language more naturally every single day. And that's a habit capable of changing not only the way you speak, but also the way you think. Now here's the question that almost every English learner asks. If I only read, will my speaking actually improve? The answer is yes, but not in the way most people expect. Speaking is like the fruit of a tree. Reading is the root. Most learners focus only on the fruit because it's visible. They practice speaking for hours, yet their vocabulary runs out after just a few sentences. They stop to think about grammar. They translate from their native language. Conversations become slow, stressful, and frustrating. But learners who read consistently are quietly building strong roots. Every sentence they read becomes another example stored in the brain. Every paragraph teaches natural expressions. Every story introduces new vocabulary and context. So when it's finally time to speak, their minds already have thousands of ready-made sentence patterns. Imagine trying to build a house without bricks. No matter how skilled the builder is, there's simply nothing to work with. Reading gives your brain those bricks. Speaking is simply arranging them into new ideas. This is why many people experience something surprising after months of reading. One day, during a conversation, they suddenly say a phrase they've never consciously studied. It just comes out naturally. Where did it come from? Their brain remembered it from reading. This process is called implicit learning. Instead of memorizing grammar rules one by one, your brain unconsciously absorbs patterns through repeated exposure. Over time, these patterns become automatic. Think about how musicians improve. They don't just learn music theory. They listen to thousands of songs. Eventually, they develop an instinct for rhythm and melody. Language works exactly the same way. The more English you read, the better your instinct becomes. You'll begin recognizing which sentences sound natural and which ones don't. You'll start choosing better words without stopping to think. You'll notice that speaking becomes smoother because your brain already knows the patterns. Another incredible benefit of reading is pronunciation. You may wonder, how can reading improve pronunciation if I'm not speaking? The answer lies in familiarity. When you repeatedly see words while also hearing them in audiobooks, podcasts, or videos, your brain begins connecting spelling with sound. Eventually, you recognize words instantly instead of struggling to pronounce each letter. For example, the first time you see the word through, it looks confusing. The spelling doesn't match the pronunciation. But after reading it dozens of times and hearing it used naturally, you stop thinking about it. It simply becomes another familiar word. The same happens with hundreds of English words that once seemed impossible. Reading also improves your listening skills. This may sound strange at first, but remember, listening isn't only about your ears. It's about your brain recognizing what it hears. If your vocabulary is small, many spoken words will sound like meaningless noise. However, if you've already met those words while reading, your brain identifies them much faster during conversations. This explains why people who read regularly often find movies, podcasts, and interviews easier to understand. Their ears aren't necessarily better. Their brains are simply more prepared. Let's talk about confidence. Confidence isn't something you magically wake up with one morning. Confidence is built through preparation. Imagine two students walking into an English interview. The first student has memorized grammar rules but rarely reads. The second student reads English articles every single day. Who is more likely to understand the questions? Who has seen more vocabulary? Who has encountered more natural sentence structures? The answer is obvious. Reading gives you familiarity. Familiarity creates confidence. Confidence reduces fear. And when fear disappears, fluency begins to grow. Many learners believe they need a huge vocabulary before they can start speaking. Actually, the opposite is true. You don't need to know every word. You simply need to know the most useful words extremely well. Reading naturally teaches those useful words because they appear again and again. Words like although, however, probably, actually, finally, suddenly. These are the words that make English sound smooth and natural. Reading introduces them repeatedly until they become part of your everyday language. Another powerful benefit is that reading teaches emotional expression. Think about your favorite novel. Characters aren't simply happy or sad, they're relieved, disappointed, curious, hopeful, grateful, frustrated. Determined. By reading stories, you learn how emotions are described naturally. Instead of saying, I'm very happy, you begin saying, I'm absolutely thrilled, I'm delighted, I'm overjoyed, incredibly grateful. Your English becomes richer, more expressive, and far more interesting. Reading also teaches you something that textbooks often ignore: how real people actually communicate. Native speakers don't always use perfect textbook sentences. They use contractions, idioms, common expressions. Natural transitions. Books, articles, biographies, and modern novels expose you to authentic English that people genuinely use every day. Perhaps the greatest transformation happens quietly. At first, reading feels slow. Every page requires effort. Every unfamiliar word seems like an obstacle. But weeks pass, then months. Suddenly, you finish an entire chapter without using a dictionary. You understand an English video without subtitles. You think in English for a few moments without translating. Those small victories may seem ordinary, but together they represent something extraordinary. Your brain is changing. You're becoming the kind of person who naturally understands English, not because you memorized everything, but because you've lived with the language every single day. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, wrote, "Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. Every page you read is a vote. A vote for becoming more fluent, more confident, more knowledgeable, more capable." And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to read for hours. Even 15 or 20 minutes every day can create remarkable results over time. Because language learning isn't a race, it's a journey. And every page moves you one step closer to fluency. So if you've ever doubted whether reading is worth your time, remember this simple truth. Books don't just fill your mind with words. They reshape the way your brain understands language. They quietly prepare you for conversations you haven't had yet. They build confidence before you even realize you need it. And one day, someone will ask, "How did your English become so good?" And you'll smile. Because you'll know the answer wasn't a secret technique. It was the simple habit of opening a book every single day. Now let me ask you one final question. What if your English could be completely different just 30 days from today? Not perfect, not native level, but noticeably stronger, more confident, and more natural. That transformation is possible, but only if you replace one habit. Instead of spending another hour endlessly scrolling through social media, spend just 20 minutes reading English. 20 minutes, that's it. Most people underestimate what 20 minutes can do because they focus on one day instead of 1 month. Or 1 year. Let's do a simple calculation. If you read for 20 minutes every day, you'll spend about 10 hours reading in a single month. That's more than 600 minutes of meaningful English exposure. In 1 year, you'll have invested more than 120 hours into your English. Now imagine reading 1 million words over several years. Imagine the thousands of sentence patterns your brain will recognize. Imagine the vocabulary you'll naturally acquire. Imagine how comfortable English conversations will begin to feel. This is the power of consistency, small actions, repeated every day, creating extraordinary results. So here's a simple 30-day reading challenge. Week 1, choose something that's easy enough to enjoy. Don't start with a difficult novel. Start with graded readers, children's stories, short articles, or simple English books. Read for 20 minutes every day. Don't worry about understanding every single word. Focus on understanding the overall message. If you stop every sentence to use a dictionary, you'll lose the flow. Instead, guess the meaning from context whenever possible. You'll be surprised how often your guesses are correct. Week 2, now increase your attention. Keep a notebook or a digital note on your phone. Write down only 5 useful words or expressions each day, not 50, just 5. Then try to create your own sentences using them. This small habit helps move vocabulary from passive memory into active memory. Week 3, begin reading aloud for 5 minutes after your silent reading session. Don't rush. Read slowly and clearly. Pay attention to rhythm, stress, intonation. You're not trying to sound perfect. You're training your mouth to become comfortable producing English sounds. If possible, listen to the audiobook while following the text, then repeat the same sentences. This technique, often called shadowing, helps improve pronunciation, listening, and speaking at the same time. Week 4, now challenge yourself. After each reading session, close the book. Without looking at the text, summarize what you read in your own words. You can speak aloud or write it down. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. The goal is to train your brain to retrieve English instead of only recognizing it. This simple exercise dramatically improves speaking confidence. At the end of 30 days, don't ask yourself, "Am I fluent?" Instead ask, "Can I understand more than I could 30 days ago? Do I recognize more vocabulary? Do English sentences feel more natural? Am I less afraid of reading?" If the answer is yes, you're already succeeding. Because fluency isn't one magical moment. It's thousands of tiny improvements that slowly become impossible to ignore. Remember this. Every expert reader was once a beginner. Every fluent English speaker once struggled with basic sentences. Every confident communicator once felt nervous. The difference wasn't talent. The difference was persistence. History is filled with people whose lives were transformed through reading. Abraham Lincoln educated himself largely by reading borrowed books. Malcolm X famously spent countless hours reading while in prison, expanding his knowledge and transforming his future. Bill Gates continues to read extensively every year because he believes learning never stops. These people came from different backgrounds, different countries, different circumstances, but they shared one powerful habit: they kept reading. And here's something important to remember. You don't need to compare your journey with anyone else's. Someone else may learn faster, someone else may already speak better. That's okay. The only person you need to be better than is the person you were yesterday. If yesterday you read nothing, read one page today. If yesterday you learned no new words, learn one useful expression today. If yesterday you were afraid to open an English book, open it today. Progress begins the moment you start. One page may not seem important, one chapter may not seem life-changing, one book may not seem enough, but remember, a river is filled one drop at a time, a mountain is climbed one step at a time, and fluency is built one page at a time. Years from now, you'll look back and realize that your English didn't improve because of one amazing trick. It improved because you showed up every single day, even on days when you felt tired, even on days when you were busy, even on days when progress seemed invisible. Because invisible progress is still progress. Your brain was learning, even when you couldn't see it. So tonight, before you go to bed, don't promise yourself that you'll read someday. Don't wait until next Monday. Don't wait until next month. Start today. Pick up a simple English book. Read one page, then another and another. Because every page you read strengthens your mind, every chapter builds your confidence, every book expands your world, and every single day you choose reading, you become a better English speaker than you were the day before. Remember, readers become thinkers, thinkers become confident speakers, and confident speakers create opportunities that change their lives. So make reading your daily habit. Protect those 20 minutes, treat them as an investment in your future. One day, the English that feels difficult today will become the language you think in, dream in, work in, and confidently speak without fear. That day begins with the page you choose to read today. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next lesson. Share this video with a friend who's learning English, and together, let's make reading a daily habit that transforms not only our English, but our lives. Thank you for watching, and happy reading.